Timor-Leste under Indonesian occupation, 1975–1999, a nation's fight for freedom. Nestled between Indonesia and Australia, Timor-Leste, also known as East Timor, was for centuries a quiet Portuguese colony. The occupation would shape not only the destiny of Timor-Leste, but also challenge the global conscience about colonial legacies, Cold War politics, and the meaning of true self-determination. A brief moment of independence. The roots of the occupation lie in the fall of authoritarian rule in Portugal. After the Carnation Revolution in 1974, Portugal began decolonizing its overseas territories. In Timor-Leste, a political awakening ensued. The Revolutionary Front for an Independent East Timor, FRETILIN, quickly gained ground among the people, promoting a vision of progressive nationalism. On November 28, 1975, FRETILIN declared East Timor's independence. But the declaration was met with alarm in Jakarta, where Indonesian President Suharto viewed the emergence of a left-leaning neighbor with suspicion, particularly amid Cold War tensions where Western nations were determined to prevent the spread of communism real or perceived. The invasion begins. On December 7, 1975, Indonesia launched Operasi Seroja, Operation Lotus, a full-scale military invasion of East Timor. Backed, explicitly or implicitly, by the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom, Indonesia justified its actions as an effort to prevent civil war and maintain regional stability. The invasion was swift and devastating. Troops landed in Dili, the capital, and over the coming months seized most major towns. Reports of mass killings, torture, and disappearances emerged almost immediately. Civilians were forced into camps, subjected to indoctrination, and denied access to humanitarian aid. Entire villages were razed. Occupation and repression, 1975–1999, the following 2 decades saw one of the most repressive military occupations in recent history. Indonesia integrated East Timor as its 27th province, but this was never recognized by the United Nations, which continued to regard Portugal as the administering power. Under Indonesian rule, an estimated 100,000 to 200,000 Timorese, up to 1/3 of the population, died from violence, famine, or disease. The Indonesian Armed Forces, TNI, implemented a policy of forced assimilation, including the suppression of the Tetum language and Timorese cultural practices. Educational and economic development was largely absent outside military needs, and any opposition was met with violence. Yet, amid this darkness, the spirit of resistance endured. The Falintil guerrilla force, led by figures such as Zanana Gusmao, conducted mountain-based resistance campaigns. Underground networks distributed banned materials, sheltered leaders, and kept hope alive. International silence and activism. Despite widespread human rights abuses, the international community remained largely silent throughout the 1980s. Indonesia's geopolitical importance, particularly as a bulwark against communism and a major trading partner, made many governments reluctant to speak out. This silence began to crack in 1991 with the Santa Cruz Massacre. On November 12th, during a peaceful memorial procession in Dili's Santa Cruz Cemetery, Indonesian troops opened fire on unarmed civilians. Over 250 people were killed. Importantly, this massacre was filmed by foreign journalists and broadcast worldwide. It ignited a global outcry and energized a transnational solidarity movement involving students, churches, NGOs, and human rights organizations. Activists from Portugal, Australia, the U.S., and Southeast Asia began organizing campaigns to pressure their governments and raise awareness of Timor-Leste's plight. Collapse of the occupation. By the late 1990s, multiple factors began to converge. The Asian financial crisis of 1997 severely weakened Indonesia's economy. President Suharto's resignation in 1998 marked the beginning of democratic reforms under B.J. Habibie. Continued international pressure and Timorese resolve created an opening for negotiation. In 1999, Indonesia agreed to a UN-sponsored referendum allowing East Timorese to choose between autonomy within Indonesia or full independence. On August 30th, 78.5% of voters chose independence. In retaliation, pro-Indonesian militias, with backing from elements of the Indonesian military, launched a scorched earth campaign, burning homes, displacing hundreds of thousands, and destroying infrastructure. The violence was so extreme that it forced the intervention of an international peacekeeping force, INTERFET, led by Australia. A new dawn. On October 25, 1999, the UN took over administration of the territory under UNTEET, United Nations Transitional Administration in East Timor. After 3 years of state building, Timor-Leste officially gained full independence on May 20, 2002. The scars of occupation remain deep. Rebuilding from scratch, economically, politically, and psychologically, has been a slow process. Yet the Timorese people have shown resilience in forging a democratic path forward. A story of resistance and redemption. The Indonesian occupation of Timor-Leste was a time of extraordinary suffering and brutality. Yet it was also a period marked by unyielding courage, both among the Timorese themselves and the global movement that supported them. Timor-Leste's story is not just one of loss, but of endurance. Proof that a small nation, with international solidarity and internal resolve, can reclaim its sovereignty against overwhelming odds.